Greetings from Casa Goring, from Nikki Aurora, and from me. Well, we have a lot of ground to cover today, and some of it is really pretty important. So, before starting, I'm going to introduce a rather lighter note. I'm going to thank Barbara Perkins, who was one of many people who said, "Quite the headpiece, Lady C. Does it have a history in your family?" Barbara Perkins and everybody else who alluded to what I wore on the previous video. It's not a family piece. It was sent to me by a lovely lady called Sue from Oxfordshire. And she is not the only person who has sent me something fabulous, because Jenny has also sent me this, and one in diamonds, in quotes. Of course, they're not diamonds at all. However, stunning, no? So thank you very much, Sue from Oxfordshire and Jenny from heaven. Oh dear. And while we're on the subject of jewellery, Kim Clark says, "Lady C, a bit off topic, but a while back you talked about a certain jeweller in London that the royals and other high-profile persons shop at. Can you remind me of the name of the establishment?" It's J. McCarthy Ltd. They were on Artillery Row and they are now in Mayfair. And I will ask that at the end of this bit that their name and their address, etc., be posted. They do fabulous stuff, and they do fantastic repairs and cleaning, etc., etc. Okay, so now we will plunge into the weighty matters. One a Duckfin, sorry, these names, says the parallels between the Nazi brown shirts shutting down critics of Hitler or Nazism is spot on. This is exceedingly dangerous. You are so correct, Lady C. Yes, I am. Any student of history will know that what the Nazis did, and the brown shirts in particular, under Karl Röhm, who of course was then done away with by Hitler in the night of the night of the long knives. He did in the brown shirts, Mr. Röhm and all of his followers, who incidentally were primarily gay. So in the early days, Hitler was helped by a strongly gay movement. Isn't that interesting? And then Hitler turned on the gays. Isn't that just awful? To use people the way he did. But there are definite parallels. The brown shirts were used to intimidate and to shut down anybody who disagreed with the basic tenets of Nazism. We are experiencing generally in society in Britain at the moment evidence that institutions and organizations that are there to serve people in service capacities are electing to not serve people on matters of taste, not on matters of legality or morality, but on matters of taste. I refer in particular to the coverage in the last day or two, the extensive coverage about the 40-page dossier from Coutts regarding why they shut down Nigel Farage's account, which by their own account was commercially valuable. They did it on the basis of the fact that they didn't like his ideas. I'm sorry. A bank is not there to approve or disapprove of people's personal or social or even political conduct. They're there to provide a service. I mean, if you've broken the law, that might be something to consider, but you've not broken any law. And one of their objections was that he tweeted or retweeted a joke told by Ricky Gervais. I mean, what? Scrambling for excuses to get rid of him. Well, you could take the view that banks have a right to pick and choose their clients and to discard them, in which case there has to be a bank that serves and services people who fall foul of fashion, because this is what we're speaking about. Fashion. When fashion dictates taste and taste dictates conduct, we are at the thin end of the wedge of totalitarianism. This is the lesson of history, and it does not behoove us to ignore it. Coural says, watch your back, Lady C. Samantha Markle, Piers Morgan, Jeremy Clarkson, and now Dan Wootton. Bit of a pattern emerging here, isn't there? I really do think that the police should get involved now. This is bullying of the highest order, and it's not right to mess with people's careers or reputations, not even to mention mental health and stress. There is a pattern emerging, and my dear, I don't need to watch my back. They have nothing on me. And if they tried to foment something, they would find it very difficult to get it to stick. Am I worried? Do I look worried? In fact, I would say, bring it on and see who's going to end up the loser. Not that I am actually inviting any difficulties or problems, but I don't seek out fights and I don't back down from them when I know I am in the right. And there are moral and societal issues at stake here. Huge societal issues at stake here. Are we going to end up with a society where everybody sings from the same hymn sheet, or then they are destroyed? Are we going to be the new protectorate of England, such as existed under Oliver Cromwell, when even Christmas and parties and the theatre were shut down? Because if a joke retweeted by a popular comedian can be used as a valid reason for shutting down somebody's bank account. We are living in very dangerous times. Very. Of course, there's another way of looking at it. They were determined to get rid of him, and since they couldn't come up with anything concrete, they came up with all sorts of muddy issues. However, there is a pattern, and I'll tell you, what is emerging is that everybody involved is either a supporter of the Sussexes or an avowed ally of theirs. And this will emerge, proof of this, let me put it that way, will emerge during this episode as I just run through the questions and the material. Because I am not saying that Sussexes are orchestrating all of this, but they are central to all of this. And it is now a moot point whether the effectiveness that is being shown by the censors and the neo-Puritans would actually have existed had a member of the British royal family and his errant wife not waded in to this societal, sociological, socio-economic issue. Because this is something that is affecting the whole of society. The tentacles are spreading far and wide. They always do when you have elitist totalitarians seeking to shut down everybody who does not agree with them. It's a standard feature of totalitarianism. And make no mistake about it, Harry and Meghan are totalitarian elitists. It doesn't matter whether you are avowed left-wing or right-wing. An elitist totalitarian is an elitist totalitarian. Strip them down naked, they're all the same. The rhetoric may be different. One or two groups of people they kill or wound or harm or shut down, but somehow damage or destroy may be different initially. But at the end of the day, it's pretty much across the board. Read your history books if you think what I say is an exaggeration, because sadly it is not. Uma Bell says, the real attack is on GB News and Dan Wootton is being used to destroy the only channel that promotes free speech. Did you watch the other news channels' behavior when GB News won the public vote, big block capitals, and Nigel Farage won Presenter of the Year? There was booing, heckling. These so-called journalists have no breeding or manners. Jealousy and spite are disgusting to witness. It's more than jealousy and spite and no breeding or manners. It is a power struggle for the soul of the nation. It is the struggle that has always taken between heterodoxy and orthodoxy. The mainstream media, by and large, do not want freedom. They want to be able to push their agendas. Some are freer than others. But when those television awards took place, and GB News and Nigel Farage won, was there jubilation from the fellow journalists? Not a bit of it. I'm going to say something, though. There is an agenda behind the scenes to bring Dan Wootton down. It has been ongoing for a while. It involves people who are tied up with Harry and Meghan. I'm going to read out the next question, and because that leads into what I want to say. No Flies on Me says, Lady C, is Dan Evans the convicted phone hacker and Prince Harry's witness for his phone hacking court case the same Dan Evans, founding director of Byline Times, that investigated and wrote the article about Dan Wootton? Yes, Dan Evans is the jailbird who is at the heart of the shut down the press legal actions concocted by David Sherborne around Harry and involving Elton John, Hugh Grant, Liz Hurley, Sadie Frost, etc., etc. He is a convicted criminal. He alleges he's turned over a new leaf. There is a great deal of virtue signalling that some ex-cons resort to pretend that they have learnt their lesson. Yeah, the lesson they've learnt, though, is that technique didn't work and got me into trouble. I'll try a new technique that's going to work and will keep me out of trouble and will cover me not only in glory but loads of money. Leopards and spots spring to mind. Now, I'm not saying that people can't learn from their mistakes, but Dan Evans, I've read what he's had to say. I've also read what he's had to say with regard to Harry and Harry's lawsuits and some of the confessions he's made with regard to Piers Morgan, etc., etc. My recommendation would be that the powers that be watch very carefully, because they are possibly being used and they are possibly becoming the useful idiots of trends and of agendas that are contrary to the legal rights, civil liberties, and overriding life interests of the general populace. It would be very unfortunate if members of the British establishment should find themselves defiled by an association with people who are jailbirds and who are being used to deprive the citizenry of this country of their civil liberties. Diane Knight says, the Sussexes who despise the media. Oh, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up. I see the light. I always know where the camera is. And then I complain about it and say, I'm being stalked. Oh, every flash takes me back. Every flash takes me back. But bring them on. The Sussexes who despise the media are using friends as pawns. A man named Misan Harriman, a Sussex friend, has recently aired Meghan's sorry views on Catherine and William's parenting skills. Sorry, sorry, I've botched it. Let me read it again. A man named Misan Harriman, a Sussex friend, has recently aired Meghan's, his views on Catherine and William's parenting skills. He refers to Prince Louis at the air show where he had a bit of a tantrum because he was bored and tired. According to Mr. Harriman, the kid was upset by the cameras. Mr. Harriman would know he's on intimate terms with Prince Louis. He says that they should not be exposing their children to the press. He's an authority on the subject. Being American, he's not American, he's Nigerian. Being American, he knows nothing of royal life and the protocol with children. He should know something about it. He's the son of a chief. He's not a total nonentity, to put it bluntly. He should know something of protocol. Of course, it's convenient to forget it. And also, maybe Nigeria chiefs' sons are of no interest to anybody except themselves. But all royal families worldwide introduce them to duty at an early age. That's right. Mr. Harriman refers to the children as kids, which tells you everything. Of course, Misan, aren't we just great friends? Come on, flash that camera, give me my light. Royal children must learn how to behave in public. All children must learn how to behave in public. It also teaches them that with privilege comes responsibility. That's right. And also that the press will always be around. That's also right. It makes my blood boil to see this trash, which you can hear has been dictated to him by a certain woman in Montecito. I wonder who that is. Diana, for all her faults, tried to do this with William and Harry, but only William seems to have understood those lessons. Do you think Meghan is behind this? By the way, it was posted the day before the Wimbledon final. I always love to hear your tactful and intelligent, insightful answers into these posts. Well, Misan Harriman is actually an interesting character. He is Nigerian. He is, as I said, the son of a chief, Chief Hope Harriman, who is a businessman and a politician from Warri in Nigeria's Delta State. And I make the point here that Nigeria is extremely class stratified. Misan Harriman is also married to a white woman and has 2 mixed-race children. He is a vociferous supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement. He's been tweeting against Dan Wootton. I've seen the tweets. He was also Vogue magazine's September 2020 triple fold center front gatefold cover featuring pictures of 20 activists often associated with the Black Lives Matter movement. He is, by his own account, an activist. Mr. Harriman is also the photographer who took those grotesque pictures of the 5 months pregnant Meghan, who looked 13 months pregnant, sitting under the tree of life in Harry's lap, beatifically looking up at her adored prince, while her belly was trying to reach to the skies. He is an avid supporter of Harry and Meghan. Avid. He is active on their behalf. That's his right. That's his right. What is not his right is to interfere in the private lives of people whose professional lives are separate from their private lives. Harry and Meghan have made their private lives and the private lives of everyone associated with them into public fora or forums, to use the anglicized version of the word. So Harry and Meghan no longer have a right to privacy. Not only have they violated their own privacy, but they have violated the privacy of others, and their violations have been so absolute that we know about Meghan's physical movements, and we know about the state of Harry's todger. We also know about the state of other people's todgers, gratis Harry's violations of their right to privacy. I'm going to make my position very clear. Anything that a television presenter does that is private and nothing to do with their public role and has no effect upon their public role should remain private. I said it in terms of Hugh Edwards, and I'm saying it in terms of everyone else. The idea that people have to be perfect to be commentators and protectors of our civil liberties is ludicrous. Also, Harry and Meghan's people, the Sussex squad, of whom clearly Misan Harriman is one, have been none too careful about adhering to the facts or the truth. They have even tried to destroy the reputations of other members of the royal family and to call into question the personal lives of other members of the royal family untruthfully and unfairly. Everybody is entitled to a private life. And as long as they are not going to be telling us what we should do in our private life, it's none of our business what they do in their private life. With due respect, if you set yourself up to be a devoted family man, and it turns out that you have been cheating on your wife, if you're just reading the news, I don't see that that's any of our business. Of course, if you are then going to be attacking public figures for the way they conduct their private lives, that becomes a matter of hypocrisy. But otherwise, no. And any public figure who wishes to do things privately, whether it is avail themselves of fora such as OnlyFans, etc., or exchange naughty pictures privately with other people, I'm afraid I rarely don't see that that's my business. I have always had a motto: you can do what you want with your private parts as long as you don't try to do anything with mine or anybody that I care about. And that, I think, is where it's at. So I hope I make my position clear on it. But Mr. Harriman is going hell for leather on behalf of people he's fond of. So he's joined the Sussex squad, has he? Artemis Juno says, Meghan Markle's talent agency is working very, very hard to destroy bad press for their new client, and that includes journalists, YouTubers, the Twitterati, etc. I see Misan Harriman, the photographer and friend, has tweeted his full concern for the whale's babies, as he calls them, being taken out on certain occasions and allowing them to be photographed. Why on earth would he care? Answer on a postage stamp, please. There's another part to this question, and I'm going to read it out after I've answered this part of it. They're not babies. 2 of them are children. The third is a young child. Not one of them is a toddler. Not one of them is a baby. He doesn't even speak English properly if he calls them a baby. But of course, this is the way that you confuse issues. You mislabel, you misrepresent. So, and why would he care? He cares because he's pushing an agenda that is destructive of our civil liberties. Our civil liberties. He doesn't understand it because he's clearly never heard of Pastor Neumeier. First they came for the socialists, and I remained silent. Then they came for the communists, and I remained silent. Then they came for the Seventh-day Adventists, etc., etc. And finally, when they came for me, there was nobody to protect me. He's never learnt the lessons of history, and he is clearly determined to push Harry and Meghan's destructive, in my opinion, a very dangerous anti-civil liberties agenda. Now, next part. Also, some ex-IRA person of colour with an Irish name has tweeted virulent and sexist remarks about Catherine. Why would he care? Who are his friends? Suddenly Dan Wootton is being accused of something by an old boyfriend. Why now? Very strange. I'm going to deprive the Irish gentleman of colour of further recognition by not even mentioning his name. I spoke about him on TV the other evening, and I said that in my opinion, the fact that he was someone of colour and was pushing the agenda he's pushing gives it a racial element. And I stand by that as a Jamaican. Being Jamaican, I can see things that maybe people who are not from a mixed race, mixed culture society don't see so readily. Do you think he would have been so disparaging about Catherine? And also, he actually was disparaging about her posterior. And actually, Catherine has a very pert, well-shaped posterior. She also has, he was saying she was scrawny. Her legs, look at her legs, then look at Meghan Markle's legs and see who has the scrawny legs, because Catherine has very well-shaped legs. It's a pile-on to disparage the Waleses, to disparage the established order, to disparage anybody who will be a protector of our civil liberties. It's a very dystopian, Orwellian agenda. And why now, insofar as the Dan Wootton business is concerned? Because he's popular. Because he's making some headway. Because he's standing up for diversity, for civil liberties, for freedom of speech, for decency. That's why they want to shut him down and shut him up. And they will use anything, because he is but one of more popular presenters at GB News, and they want to shut him down and they want to shut GB News down. Notwithstanding the fact that if you look at GB News, you will see that whenever there is a discussion, all sides of the question are represented. I don't see that happening on the BBC or on ITV. That's strange, isn't it? That the guardians of, in quotes, of civil liberties want to deprive those who are practicing civil liberty. They want to shut them down, but they want to maintain the facade of orthodoxy, where everybody has to agree with the same thing, otherwise they lose their bank account, they lose their reputation, they lose their right to speak, they lose their livelihood. Neo-Puritanism, very dangerous, very dangerous. And I say this as somebody who is a liberal conservative, small l, small c. I believe in conserving the good that we have and moving on by enhancing our world to make it even better. But to do that, you have to be responsible and you have to respect one of the cardinal rules of life, which is that imbalance is the opposite of balance. Peggy Mahoney says, "We all get it wrong sometimes, so Dan is only human, and I think Amber Heard pulled the wool over his eyes. I have forgiven him for that because Johnny Depp has been vindicated in the American courts. Water under the bridge. I enjoy Dan Wootton and his videos and will continue to support and watch his programs. Thank you very much, Peggy Mahoney. My sentiments exactly. I, as everybody will know who knows anything about me, have been an avid supporter of Johnny Depp once I realised that Amber Heard was a total fraud and phony. And being a woman, she said one or two things that I knew were not possible if you're a woman to ever survive and reinstate activities with the man concerned. Let me put it like that. How any woman could have believed her stories after one or two of the things she said with regard to the use of bottles is quite beyond me. I can get why men would believe, because men are configured somewhat differently, let's put it that way. So I can get why, especially men who love their mothers and who like women, and Dan Wootton loves his mother and likes women, loves his sister. I think he rather likes me too. You know, he's not one of those gays who doesn't like women. He's a gay who likes women. Easy pickings, my dear, for any woman who has a sad sack story. And yes, he is only human, and he might emerge as even more human than we wish, but that's fine too. Humans are human, and humans are not perfect. The reality is the person doing good and valuable work in a responsible manner? And if they are, I say, continue. And there's no doubt in my mind that what Dan Wootton does is advancing the cause of civil liberties generally. And as long as he does them, I think good for him. Martin Luther King, let me make the point, who is a revered figure, and quite rightly so too, was not a perfect human being. Martin Luther King had eyes that wandered and hands and other things that strayed. That should not, and fortunately so far does not, take away from the validity of the cause that he fought so hard for and lost his life as a result of representing. Miss B says, "Dear Lady C, I'm sure you and your viewers will be interested in this study linking left-wing authoritarianism with narcissism and psychopathy. The study suggests that people with dark personality traits like narcissism and psychopathy are drawn to certain antagonistic ideologies and political activities. However, their motivation is not necessarily driven by a genuine desire for social justice and equality. Instead, they use these ideologies and activities as a way to fulfill their own ego-centered needs. The researchers call this phenomenon the dark ego vehicle principle." You are referring to a study by Anne Crispens and Alex Bertrams, who have coined a new phrase for psychological behavior, the dark ego vehicle principle. It neatly explains such political figures as Lenin, Stalin, and Mao. It focuses on left-wing authoritarianism. There have been many studies done into right-wing authoritarianism, as if right-wing authoritarianism is the only form of totalitarianism or authoritarianism, when patently the most malignant forms of authoritarianism and totalitarianism in the 20th century were either totally left-wing or started as left-wing, because I include Adolf Hitler in that number, because when Adolf Hitler started the National Socialist Party of Germany, it was called the National Socialists for a reason. Now, it was started shortly after the First World War. There had been in 1919 a left-wing attempt to take over the German state, which failed. So the Weimar Republic was created with the threat of left-wing left-wing totalitarianism. Rosa Luxemburg was one of the famous figures of the movement, and it's therefore completely intelligible that Adolf Hitler was starting out from the point of socialism because the empire had been right-wing. So what was going to have appealed popularly would have been left-wing. Well, once he got into power, he showed everybody that he was nothing but a political prostitute who would sell his philosophies and his beliefs out for power. And he was an all-inclusive opportunist. And there are other all-inclusive opportunists functioning at the moment who will adopt and adhere to any policy when it suits them and then ditch it for something else. I don't even need to mention any names. I'm sure you can think of one or two people right off the bat. Left-wing extremism, according to this study, is linked to toxic psychopathic tendencies and narcissism. And I'm going to read out a bit. Based on existing research, we expected individuals with higher levels of left-wing authoritarianism to also report higher levels of narcissism. According to this principle, individuals with dark personalities, such as highly narcissistic and psychopathic traits, are attracted to certain forms of political and social activism, which they can use as a vehicle to satisfy their own ego-focused needs, instead of actually aiming at social justice and equality, which, for instance, is why the eco-warrior who threw orange confetti over George Osborne and his wife at their wedding the other day was then able to get on a plane and go to Thailand for a holiday. The wild inconsistency is what is at play here. However, right-wing extremism is frowned upon as a result of what has happened with Nazism, etc., and the various right-wing late 20th century governments, most of which fell into serious disrepute. Right-wingism, to put it that way, is not societally desirable. People don't get brownie points for being right-wing extremists. They get brownie points for being left-wing extremists. And they are able to fly under the radar as humanitarians when in fact they are anything but. And I'm going to read what these researchers said. In particular, certain forms of activism might provide them with opportunities for positive self-presentation and displays of moral superiority, to gain social status, to dominate others, and to engage in social conflicts and aggression to satisfy their need for thrill-seeking. Here we have it. Not only the eco-warriors who love shutting down London and then hopping on planes or getting into their gas-guzzling cars and going back to their 8-bedroom mansions in the country, which are heated by oil-burning central heating systems. I mean, you couldn't make any of this up. But they are virtue signalers. And they want the thrill, the drama. It's all about the drama. It's about being included. It's about being a part of a whole. It's the feedback emotionally that they get from being a member of a pack that is regarded as admirable. It's fun. The study also showed that many times they do not practice what they so loudly preach. Social justice is often used as a guise for these activists to behave in an unhinged way, the research noted. And now I will quote, an individual high in LWA might declare anyone to be old-fashioned who is opposing their own progressive values. Strive to suppress free speech, there we have it, try to suppress free speech, to regulate this expression of right-wing beliefs in educational institutions, and even endorse the use of violence to reach their own political goals. Does this sound familiar? Is this beginning to sound like the agendas that we have been concerned about recently and that are represented by various people whose names don't even need to be mentioned? The study also makes the point that beyond using any means necessary, so it shows that they are amoral, people of privileged backgrounds who are aligned with LWA often use their narcissism to make activism solely about themselves instead of achieving social equality for struggling groups. We can think of Meghan as an example of that. Every foray into social equality becomes about her. Why did she lose Spotify? She couldn't even interview people without spinning it to be about her. That is, when she interviewed them, because 9 times out of 10, she didn't interview them. Somebody else interviewed them. And she simply was dropped in to ask the questions and then spin her answers so they were all about her. I quote, "Minority groups should be made aware of the narcissistic enemies from within their activist movement, as these individuals could hijack the cause, thereby reducing the success of the activism in many ways. As grandiose narcissists typically desire fame, distinction, elevated social status, and high social importance, they can be assumed to strive for influential positions that involve social visibility and outreach, as well as access to financial and other resources." I'm going to interject here at this point and say, Lenin had an opportunity to introduce democracy to Russia in a broader way than it had already been introduced under the Tsar and then under Kerensky. What did he do? He promised the kulaks land so that they would vote for him, and then proceeded to not only enslave them, but exterminate them as a class. He also ended up living in the palaces of the Tsars, as did Stalin. I'm going to end with what the authors made clear as well, because this dovetails with a point I have previously made. I even made it once on Dan Wootton's show by saying that Meghan is not really left-wing, she's right-wing, because she's a totalitarian. And people don't understand that left-wingers can be totalitarian elitists. They think only right-wingers can be. So, and they think if you pretend to be left-wing, you cannot be an elitist totalitarian or an authoritarian elitist. Well, you can, and they often are. And the authors make the point that authoritarianism exists on both sides of the political spectrum, and there is a wide range of literature and research in the field of right-wing authoritarianism. However, research on authoritarianism observed in individuals who are supportive of left-wing political ideologies are still rare. They may be rare, and this may be one of the first, but it will be but the first of many, because the danger today does not come from the patently obvious right-wing elitist authoritarians who are quite rightly viewed with suspicion and who are kept at arm's length, but from the left-wing authoritarian entity, which is given a free pass when in fact its aims and its goals amount to the same thing. Totalitarianism is totalitarianism. You know, Communist China, I have been told by several very wealthy Chinese, Chinese communism is capitalism par excellence. That's called communism to conceal the fact that it is simply totalitarian capitalism. So, we're thinking China is a communist country. It's not. It's a capitalist country that is authoritarian and totalitarian. We need to be very, very careful when we use labels that we understand what those labels mean and what they don't mean, and why we should be vigilant, and why we should look beyond the surface and be behind the labels to the reality. This is our future we are speaking about, and the future of our children and grandchildren. Do we want a free society where people's rights and civil liberties are respected, and there is a degree of orderliness in the society which is desirable, as well as a degree of dispute and protest which are also desirable? Or do we wish to live in a society that is totalitarian, authoritarian, overregulated, and if we don't abide by the orthodoxy, whatever the orthodoxy is, we are cancelled? Because that's what happens in China, and that's the danger of what is starting to happen in this part of the world as well, unless I am misreading things, and I don't think I am. Because we can and should and will prevail as long as we understand that we need to be the guardians of our civil liberties. All governments will try wherever possible to assume power and encroach upon our civil liberties. That is what I learned in an American college. Thorough. The least government is the best government. Thorough on Walden Pond. We studied this in an American college of the State University of New York in 1967. I sincerely hope everybody is still studying it in American universities today. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. Please keep the questions and comments coming in, and Godspeed. Also, if you have enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye.